Hello, 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 and welcome to Afro Esoterica, where I go into esoteric topics from the lens of a Black woman who is grounded, and my positionality is within an Indigenous African framework, having studied with Elder Malidoma Somé. And my way of being in the world is as an art maker and someone who deeply is curious about the world around me and deeply curious and a student of the realm of the spirit. Today, I want to talk about something a bit personal, and I'm offering it because I'm at the point with it that I'm able to move this through me as medicine that needs to be given to my community. And it is around death. It is around specifically initiation, death, and the mystery, and also positioning this talk within the realm of understanding that water is the element of grief. And within the Dagra concept, it is grief and the water of grief that allows our dead ones to become ancestors, right? Water is the element of reconciliation because water can reconcile that which we cannot reconcile just in the material world. And that water has the medicine of the in between, right? Where the spirit and the physical realm often meet, right? Water is this liminal space, this technology of moving across deep and into all that, even the crevices in our society at present. Death is ever present with us, right? We're living in a polycrisis. We are having to hold, if we're able to hold it, the concept of the destruction of the world itself because of what modernity and technology has, the violence it's wrought upon the earth and the waters and the environment itself. We're looking at many of our Western societies operating as a death cult, right? The funding of war, of genocide ad nauseum, right? As many of these geopolitical crises, no matter how they look on the top, and the figures who are named as being part and parcel of these tensions, we know that underneath, most of the time, this is vying for resources. And then we have all of the personal deaths that we experience. 600,000 Black women out of the labor force. Um, we have the personal issues related to what it is to caretake children, caretake ailing parents, perimenopause, the myriad of ways of deaths, loss of job, illnesses, chronic illness, navigating aging, navigating difficulties or issues with our children, navigating divorce, loss of relationships, loss of friendships. And often we do not see these moments as a cosmic invitation, a divine invitation for us to step into the water to drown. I've often said when someone has asked me how I'm doing that I'm drowning, because that's how it feels to be immersed under all of the myriad of problems, not just personally with my own family, but then magnified about my personal experiences within the context of misogyny and misogynoir, within the context of late stage capitalism, within the context of racial hierarchy and racial capitalism, within the context of colonialism, the loss of the names of my own ancestors, the loss of connectivities and familial relationships because of what enslavement has done, these generational patterns, working to survive in a society that has never meant for someone who looks like me, who is racialized and gendered as me, someone who is a single mother caretaker as I am, to survive. This comes with endless grief. And last year, one of the my greatest fear came to life in front of my eyes, and I was immediately submerged into the deep, dark water of grief. So deep and so dark, I didn't even know how deep I was in it. If you have experienced grief and loss, which if you're human, this is part and parcel of the experience, you know that what often people call death, they say it's a period. In the West, death is viewed as something stagnant, a finality, right? It is a period. If we're looking at it grammatically, using grammar as a metaphor, death is considered in the West a period. We are expected to immediately end that grief that comes with that, go back to work, pick yourself up, go back to work because you must be productive in our society. There is not time nor space often for us to go through what death really brings to our doorstep. And some deaths are easy to recognize when it's an actual physical person who has died, especially if it's someone close to you. But when that death is the loss of safety, the loss of things you never even got to have, we often don't know how to memorialize that. There often isn't place in our society for that. So we are walking around heavy laden with grief. We are a people in grief without places to collectively grieve until someone dies. And we often meet grief with pathology. We think something is wrong with me. I just don't feel right. We're looking to get back to productivity, to get back to efficiency, to go back to who we were, and not often recognizing that in these moments, through these unexpected issues in life, because we've left the indigenous societies, we've left the hearth, right, of the village. And in our modern society, with all of its technologies, it hasn't found the way for us to communally hold all the griefs that we have and are exposed to continuously. So in modernity, we don't have a place to grieve openly. What we often experience is people shunning the home of grief because they don't want to reckon with the griefs that your grief may bring up. So grief becomes a very solitary experience versus communal. And I found myself in this situation that I will not name, but of immense proportions to me as a mother. And I walked onto my patio and said to my spirits, "What have you brought to me?" And the answer was that I was being initiated into the path of water through grief as an elder. And they explained to me that this is how it looks. This would not be my first communication with water. On the death of my father in 2019, as I sat amongst some trees and water, communication happened. I experienced the grief of being a mother so profoundly, my experience of what it is to feel motherhood has cast me under the wheels of a misogyny, of a system that hates women, hates mothers, hates black women, hates black mothers. My grief immense. Then I feel the grief of the earth as mother immense for what we have wrought, what we have brought to our mother. And as I wept, I felt this grief so immense, ripping the fabric of the world of society open. And and I said, there's so much grief, I cannot hold it. It was ripping, shredding apart the nature of just everything. It was so immense because on the backside it was so much love that was tearing everything apart. And then immediately I heard the words, but you must, like this. And all of that grief just flowed through me like a current, like a water. And immediately what I heard is, you've been baptized into the path of water through your grief. You've cried the tears of your own baptism. And it showed me many women across time who've also been baptized, many mothers who through the death of their children, like Trayvon Martin's mother, baptized into purpose through the unthinkable, through their worst fear come alive, that the tears that they cry become a baptism into a path of water, a path that none of us really truly want. And that many years ago began a conversation and a training around what it means to keep grief flowing. They said I can wield grief, and that in order to do so, I had to water the waters. I had to keep it fluid and running, because when I allow it to run through me, I can help others conduct it. And I did not want this. Who wants to be born into purpose and a baptism of your own grief? But I would reckon with this message 7 year, 5, 6. I don't do math. 6 years into the future through this experience, my own worst fear as a mother coming forward and them telling me, now I'm being initiated into becoming an elder. And what I was being forced with, or offered, not forced, but invited into, is the ability to hold two contradictory things, things that normally would break you apart if you can hold them, but that only water can still flow through the middle and find its way to sustain both. When we are presented with circumstances in life that break us open, we do not need to reach for a pointing finger to cast blame, whether externally or on ourselves. We do not need to pathologize the moment. It is not a sign that we have done something wrong. And this is what my elder Malidoma Somé said often, is that comfort is a placebo that makes us think. In the West, we associate comfort with the height of spiritual evolution. That is not so. The greater power you have, the greater the wound you'll be asked to treat. And comfort is not something that we should be looking towards as a marker of our spiritual work in the world. We're here to bring medicine. And when that medicine needs expression and development, it often comes to us as initiation through circumstances in life through which our current self cannot meet the challenge. And then we are thrown into death. And we don't want to die. So we clutch and we grab every shred, everything we can think of, every tool, whether it's spirituality or it's marijuana, whatever tool we need, we grab everything we can to fight our death, because we do not want to die like this. We don't want to die here. We don't know what's on the other side of this moment. We don't know who we will become. And this is just another place in the West that we have not understood death appropriately. We've understood death as an end and not as an ellipses, a dot, 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 an invitation to mystery. And boy, let me tell you, we do not love mystery. I have mystery in the Dagara, understanding this idea that it's that which knowledge can't consume. What we cannot understand, what makes no logical sense, when we are thrown into, like, I don't know what happens after this job loss. I don't know what happens after this divorce. I don't know what happens after the death or this illness or this sickness. I don't know what happens when I have to rebuild my life. I don't know that person. I don't know who they are. I don't know what to do here. We are being initiated into mystery. And when it comes through grief, it feels like drowning. It feels like you can't breathe. And what eventually comes is that we need to learn how to die and how to live in the land of the dead and then die in the land of the living. We must learn to walk worlds in ways that the West doesn't afford us the tools or the understanding, the initiations, the trainings in order to do so. And often we think something is wrong instead of something is not wrong. Something is returning us into the womb. And instead of it being amniotic fluid, being the water that holds us as we are developing in secret, in the mystery, even to our mothers, even to those who have the womb that we grow in. It's a mystery what goes on in there. That process is between that developing soul, that body, and the divine. We don't know what happens in utero. We don't know. We cannot see. Even with our best technologies, we cannot watch 24/7 to say and see what's happening in there. And in the same way, often many of us, through our own tears, are invited back into the birthing place, where we will die, 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 die. And then that death is not final, because when we die, we continue on now past the threshold of what we knew. And now, when that version of me before this thing happened exists, or the version of you before the divorce, before that person died, before that loss, that person is no more. And we know that. And then what we have is the mystery. What comes after the dot, dot, dot. This is where, when we cry, we wash the ancestors through this threshold, this watery threshold, into a place where they can advise us. But how often do we remember that as we also shed versions of ourselves who have died? Toni Morrison says that we don't always survive whole, we survive in part. And the part of us that has died, what does it look like to usher in that death and allow ourselves to have no answers, to usher in that death, to grieve for that, to grieve us, that version of us, the version of our life, and to allow even that self to wash as an ancestor to guide us from a different point. That even our dead selves can be our ancestors who become helpful guides to us. But the watery depths, the watery in between where we die and before we've come out and resurrected, in between is the realm where we must learn to navigate. And just like leaving the land and going into the water, the skill sets that we learn on land do not aid us. You only drown in the water when you try to breathe it in, but baby, this is not oxygen. It's a different realm and it needs different tools. Nothing is wrong. You're just dying. Nothing is wrong. You're just dying. And then you're learning to live past your own death into the mystery, where no mystery is the same landscape twice. Where you have to learn to hear, in the midst of grief, the voice of your ancestors and the light of your medicine and purpose calling you forward in an unknown territory where everything you thought you had is not here. This is an initiation, and the death is a threshold. And this is the medicine in us showing itself to us. And when we can find ourselves and walk the mystery, continue on in the liminal space, what we find is that we do return to shore entirely different, entirely new, and not in the way that we think. I used to love some of these Bible stories that when I was a Christian and I would study the Bible, and there is, I think it's Jacob has this encounter with this angel who some Bible scholars believe was pre-incarnate Jesus, but they wrestle and Jacob says, "You will not release me till you give me, till you bless me." And the sign of the blessing was that his hip was dislocated and he walks the rest of his life with a limp. And I was so confused about this as a young woman. I was 12 reading this, couldn't get this story out of my mind. And I think he called that place Peniel. I have seen God and lived. These circumstances, when they come up, these are the places where we have seen God under the water. We meet ourselves more deeply. We learn things that we could not have known. And then we come out forever changed, even when that change is a limp. This is not about returning to comfort. This is about what it means to be people of the water, medicine people, who can hold grief and not run, who can hold grief and be submerged and have learned to not drown, who've learned to die, to die, to die, and continue forward in the ellipses, who can listen and say, "What have you here for me? Even here, what am I to give?" To listen deeper, to not look for blame, to not look for logical, linear understanding, because in this place, it cannot be grasped. Are there answers to why the things happen to us that happen? Are there true answers for why children are bombed and our loved ones are sick and ill? Is there really good answer? No. This is beyond, this is in the Yulbangara, that which knowledge can't eat, beyond the understanding of right and wrong and feels good and doesn't feel good. Beyond, there is a field, there is a place where the depths of understanding go outside of the linear logic into something deeper, something primordial, something more present. And in a world on fire, what we need are more death walkers and water bearers. Because when you can live with the grief, the water medicine, the medicine of grief and our tears is that it can reconcile that which can't be reconciled. And this is not always something that can be put into language. But there is a technology why our indigenous societies, our wise ones of yesteryear before modernity understood that grief held communally, helped to reconnect us to something more than just our own soul, connects us to each other, and it connects us in the dagger understanding to the realm of the ancestors at large who are assisting us from a place beyond what we can see in the 3D. And that it's at death, it's through death that we can get thin and close to that realm. And the grief allows us to traverse this. It is not as important that we are comfortable. And I hate that. I can't tell you how much I hate that. But what we have to serve this world necessitates the need for us to learn how to walk through death as an ellipsis and not as a period. We are surrounded by death that has not been memorialized, that hasn't been articulated. We're surrounded by societies full of griefs, ancestral griefs going back 400 thousands of years because of empire and colonialism and death and religious wars and battles and civil wars, and we as a human people are immersed in grief, and we are trying to reconcile things that cannot be reconciled. And we need the wailers, we need the grief walkers, we need more initiates into the dark waters who can descend into those waters undrowned, die and come out with medicine for the people who are burning up for want of a soft place to land and be held. And the water offers us this. To become children of water and reconciliation, children who are not thrashed about by the storms. I always wondered how you see these older Black women who sit with a knowing, and when the world is falling apart and you're like, it's the end of the world. And they say, I've lived at the end of worlds and been reborn anew, and I know how to walk that. It's a level of faith and knowing that can't be articulated. They can't tell you what the journey is, but you can see in their eyes that they know. And you feel secure when they're there, when the world's falling apart. And that grounded older woman, or that grounded older man, that grandpa or grandmother, that grounded older person who does not react based on the circumstances, sits in poise as if they're listening to something beyond. That is the call. To become, to practice becoming. Someone who can live in a tsunami and bring back the right bucket of water to the village on fire. It's taken me 14 months to come up for air. 14 months. I'm different in more ways than one. It's a difference I never hoped to have. But in ritual honoring the me that died in the circumstance, and finally bringing her back into my community, putting her on my altar and saying, you who are dead now, the version of me who has died, my grief has washed you into wisdom, and now I call you back to guide me forward. I honor you now, just not as dead one, but as ancestor, who is positioned rightfully to help me serve and fulfill my mission for why my soul has come and chosen to come in this body, in this time, in this experience. And this medicine now I'm ready to share with others because it's so necessary. And so for 3 months, you'll initiate yourself with my assistance as a doula into your own death, which may have already come, but will walk the liminal space. You'll develop the type of ancestral connection that's needed for these moments, the connection to Shura, which some people might call higher self, but in the dagger it's called Shura. That you that's beyond just the physical personality self, that's beyond. To learn how to walk the liminal, the mystery, the depths without flailing when you're immersed in the grief, flailing, trying to breathe and learn to be undrowned, to meet grief, say hello. Welcome back, teacher. What must die? And how can I be a good steward over this death journey? And how can I usher this into becoming ancestor? How can I leave my linear brain, which wants to make reason and meaning before it's time, that wants to pathologize or or name, and allow myself to use a different faculty, a different way of being, and a different set of knowing to traverse the waters? And what can I come back with to bring to my community so that I might serve my purpose and my people? This starts the full moon Saturday, September 26th. We'll meet the last Saturday of the month and the second Sunday for ritual ceremonial praxis, where we will learn and develop ritual and ceremony for this process, where you can be held in communal witnessing so that your death doesn't lay ungrieved, rotting, while the version of you and the life you're clinging to is rotting, and you are walking in a valley of dry bones without knowing that this moment is okay. Doesn't feel good, but you will water this moment with your tears and something new will grow. You don't know what it is. That deserves honor and tending. And that's what we'll do in this container. If you want to join me in this, the link is at my bio. And we will do this lovingly and together in community.